Hey guys, welcome back. This is Joe with Unity Code Tutorials, and we're on to our next tutorial. This is number 6. So in the previous tutorial I mentioned how when we shoot down the tank we're going to make it break down into pieces. Well, I was going over my example of how I was going to do that, and I decided that at this point I feel like it would be overwhelming to show you how to do that exactly. Plus I found some really cool explosion prefabs that we want to use, so what we're going to do is just have it explode. We will make something pop out of it. Don't know for sure yet what I'm going to use that for, but that way you still will get the idea of what it means to have a piece of shrapnel be thrown into what it's called is an explosion force. So we're going to make a piece of shrapnel. It might not look like tank shrapnel at this point. In the future we'll probably do something creative with it. I don't know, we'll see. But moving forward, so what you're going to want to do is get these FX explosion pack prefabs. Has all kinds of cool explosions. So what you want to do is go to the asset store, and I'll show you what I did. All I did was search for explosions, free only, and if you come down here you're going to see fire explosion. Wait a minute, that's not it. No, FX explosion pack. Click that. I'll hit to open. Of course it'll say download. You'll hit the download button and then it will say import, and you'll import it into Unity and it will give you this folder here. And if you open this folder, here are all the different explosions. I haven't actually put any in the game yet. I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. But these are the explosions that we're going to use. Maybe not all of them right away, but we have a lot of options and that's good. Okay, so we need to go back to our script, figure out what exactly we want to happen here. So when the hit points is less than or equal to 0, right now all we're doing is destroying it, which is great. We are going to destroy it, but we're going to actually spawn one of those explosions. So all it is a prefab, which is just a saved game object. So we're going to make our variable up here. I'm actually going to put it at the very top. Public game object, capital G, type game object, and let's go ahead and call it explosion object, and we'll be able to assign that from the inspector. I'm going to go ahead and do that now so we can decide which explosion we want to use. Now before we decide which explosion we want to use, we should probably test some of these. So on your own time you can always test all of these. I'm not going to do that right now. But we're going to bring this out. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to look at the tank and look at where it is. It's at 57, 5.8, negative 5. And I'm doing that because I want to put the explosion at the same place the tank is. Test it, check the sizing, make sure everything's matching up correctly. So 57, 5.8, negative 5. So I'm going to go to this explosion. 57, 5.8, negative 5. Put it at the same position. Okay, now if I open this explosion here, I can click on this. This is a particle system. Simulate it, and I can barely see it. It's way too small. So what you want to do is come into the specs of the particle system and look for start size, which is right here, and we're going to crank it up to about 40 and then hit simulate again. Okay, that's more like it. Now if we come down here, there's also a decal that's going to appear. Let's make sure we can actually see that. It looks like we can't. So let's take the explosion, let's move it up a little bit, go back, check the decal, see if we can see it. Now it's possible it could be too small also. So let's go over here under decal in the particle system component, and let's look for start size. Start size right here. Let's put that up to 40 as well. See if that helps us. Okay, it is a lot higher now. It is too high. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't know where that was before. Here's what I'm going to do. Let's just start over. Let's just bring out a new prefab. And here's also what I can do. If this happened, if I want to put it at the same position, I can put it inside of tank, which makes its position relative to the position of tank because it's a child of the tank, and then I can just drag it out. Just come down here. Okay, so it's still going to be now the position updated to its world position. It's no longer a part of the tank, but it's still in the same position. Now I'm going to test this, go back to decal, go to start size and put it at 40. Okay, and it's too high. It's still too high. So the decal is appearing there. And the explosion, I need to reset this because I never updated the prefab, put that at 40. So that is looking good, but the decal is too high. Okay, so how about we just take the decal and push it down to a place that looks good. Get some different angles here. So we have that, and then we have our explosion, which almost looks like we need to bring that up. Okay, in this case, the way the particle system is set up, looks like that's not going to do anything. Now the ring, we're going to have to resize the ring. Let's put the ring up. See if that will help us. That looks like it will help us. So all you want to do is get these at a good position. I don't need to make it perfect right now to show you what I'm going to show you. I'll get that done maybe at a later time. I do just want to see what the best position here would be, and you can see where I'm going with this, because when it actually plays, all this stuff is going to happen at the same time. All these things are going to appear. See, so it looks like decal needs to be brought down, maybe even a little more. Okay, now that looks good. Now I want to keep these the way they are because this is the plugin and this is what we're using. So what I'm going to do, this is what we're using to pull from, what we're going to do is just say tank explosion on here, and then I can drag this into my prefabs that I'm creating. So now we have our tank explosion, and then this is what I'm going to use on my script here. So if I go to my tank, if I go to my vehicle script, and we have our explosion object, now we have to keep in mind that once we do this, we're going to have to apply this to the tank prefab so that all the other tanks get it too. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say tank explosion is the explosion object. Wait, why isn't it going over there? Let's see what's going on here exactly. Could it be that this, okay, this is indeed a game object. Game object, okay, let's open this up. What is going on here? What the heck is going on? Okay. This is what is going on. I'm trying to assign a prefab out here. Well, no, that shouldn't matter. Will it let me assign this one? This is really weird. We're going to have to restart Unity because this should not be happening. I'll be right back. Okay, I figured it out. That was a little embarrassing. The reason I wasn't able to assign it is because if I go here, it says Game Manager. I used Game Manager instead of Game Object, and Game Object is actually what I want. So it's very important to make sure that we're getting the right thing in there. Okay, so save that. Let it compile. Now if I go to tank, it's a Game Object, so I can slide it in Game Object. Now what I want is the prefab explosion. We're going to put the prefab explosion in there. Once we do that, we can hit apply, which will apply this to the other tank prefabs. We don't want to use this one because this one's in the scene, and we don't want to apply something in the scene to a prefab. We want it to point to another prefab so that it will always be able to access it. Okay, so now that we have that in there, we can get to our code, and we can go to actually spawning this thing. So, down here, before we destroy the game object, we're going to put this before. Once we destroy it, we wouldn't be able to spawn the explosion because the script would be gone. The instance of this that this script is on would be gone. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to instantiate our explosion object. Instantiate explosion object, comma, space, and then we want to do transform position because we want it to spawn in the same place where the tank is. And then for the rotation, we're not going to do quaternion.identity. And I think I may have said this wrong in a previous tutorial. I thought quaternion identity described the rotation that it's saved as in the prefab. What it actually means is that the rotation is 0. Now in this case we want it to spawn the way it's saved in the prefab, and if we look at the rotation, it's not 0, 0, 0. So what we want to do is grab that rotation. So we're going to access this transform component and get this rotation from this prefab, which we're pointing to from our tank, right? Because we dragged it in right there. So we're going to go in here and we're going to just say explosion object, that's our reference, dot transform to get the component, and then rotation. And that will be our rotation. That's what we want. Okay, so we're going to do that right before we destroy the tank. Control S, I'm going to save that. Go back to Unity, we'll go ahead and test this. This I'm going to go ahead and deactivate right now because we don't want any confusion. I'm going to play the game, shoot down the tank, and see how it looks. Okay, it looks good except for the fact that it's a little bit too low. So let's take this one, let's bring it back into play, and let's actually what I can do is I can just drag this over here. I can see how it's going to look. Now that looks good. That looks good, but what if I drag this into tank? Set it to 0, 0, 0, which means it's literally at the same place the tank is, and then I'm just going to drag it back. Because it looked like it was too low. I didn't change the y-axis here. I just dragged it back so that we can look at it. And we can see that it's too low. Okay. I actually forgot I was going to bring it out of the tank so that it's just freestanding in the global realm. And it's too low. The reason I dragged it back is just so that I could see it without the tank covering it up. So we can see that it's too low. So how high does it need to be? Well, let's try just pushing it up a little bit. Okay, that still doesn't look quite high enough. Let's go ahead and push it up a little bit more. Okay, that looks better. Now, I mean, you could spend more time looking at this and tweaking it and making sure it's exactly perfect. But for the purposes of this tutorial and for right now, that looks good, okay? So we need to bring it up to 9.8 on the Y. So there's a couple of ways we can do this, right? Because that's where we need it to spawn. If we wanted to spawn in the same place as the tank, we would have to add another object, and I think that actually might be the way to go. So we can do create empty. Now that this is at the right height, we can drag this. Okay, we need to back up. This game object, this is going to be the parent of this object. So this, we want to make this a child of the tank and zero it out, so that this is at the same place as the tank. The reason we're doing that is because in the script we want to spawn it in the same place where the tank is. So this will be what we spawn. And then we're going to take this and put it inside of that. Okay. So we want to take this now and put it inside of this, which this is at the right position of the tank. And then, now that this is inside of it, we now have the right height saved. Because it maintains its position. It's just now a child of this, which means if this moves, so does this. But it's maintained its position. Now we do need to we have its height set correctly, but we do need to bring it back over to the tank. So how can we do that? If we take a look, well, here's what we do. We just want to zero out the X. If we do that, these are both in line with the tank. The Y is 4 because it's actually above the tank. It's a little bit higher. That's where we need it. But it's a parent of this, and this one's at 0, 0, 0. So if we were to spawn this one would spawn respectively, but 40 units above, because that 4 is relative to the position of this. Now, if that is confusing at all, just think of it like this. We're placing it inside of an object that can spawn at the exact position of the tank while making everything look good. It's just that it's adjusted a little bit. It needed to be a little bit higher. Well, now it's a little bit higher. But it's okay because we can put it inside of this. So now that we have all that, this is actually going to be our tank explosion. We're going to grab this and we're going to bring it over and put it on top of our prefabs. It's going to give you a warning, just hit replace anyway. Okay, now before I delete this, we're going to test. I'm going to go ahead and just disable that. Go back up here just to kind of avoid confusion. So that has been assigned to the tank. Well, okay, it's been assigned to the tank explosion, which has already been assigned, so it's going to automatically update it over here. Now, being that I did all that, I'm going to go ahead and save my project just to be safe. And now we're going to test our game. So we're going to shoot down this tank. Okay, it looks a little bit better. Something is still off. Something is definitely not right. Maybe I better make sure that this correct tank explosion got assigned to this. Being that we did all that finagling, it's possible it may not have happened. Okay, now, here's what we want to do. We want to go in our tank, and this is the one that was supposed to work correctly. So let's bring that back up. And this might be what happened. I never dragged it out. I might have to drag it out, because if I do that and I test this one still seems to be working correctly. But being that I hadn't dragged it out, its position was relative to its parent, which was the tank. Now that I dragged it out, I'm thinking I can click on this and drag this over the prefab. Let's go ahead and save the project again. Now, deactivate that. Prefab has been updated. Play the game. F key twice, shoot the tank down. And now that looks good. That's what we want. So, I'm actually glad that we ran into some complications, because it gave me an opportunity to show you some troubleshooting and how you can get things to position properly. So if that was at all confusing, I would suggest watching that part of it again, where I talked about making things children, making things parents, dragging it out, looking at the position here and to see what's going on, realizing that this position is relative of its parent, and then the one that's at the top, like this one, it's not under anything else. You can see that more evident here. It's not under anything else. So this is the world coordinates. Everything under it is then relative to the parent. So if that's at all confusing, it would be good to understand it, but I understand that if at first it seems confusing, and that's because it did for me when it was new to me. So now we know how to make things explode, right? We know how to make the tank disappear and make the explosion. We haven't added sound to it yet. That's coming, and that's coming soon. But this has been a productive tutorial. I'm going to save the next stuff for the next tutorial. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon.